the Excise Duty Amendment Number 2 Bill 2025.
Honorable Minister of Finance.
Madam Speaker, I beg to move a motion that the bill entitled the Excise Duty Amendment Bill Number 2 of 2025 be read for the second time.
Seconded. Seconded by Katesh. Veterans Acho, Nalayo, Nekesa, Okot, Mutembule, Kavale, Dr. Ojok, Annette, Patience, Elders, Betty, Isingiro, by the whole side. Sam, Aleptong, Dr. Yume, Musa, Sraj, Tororo, yes, Palisa, Bukedi. Speak to your motion.
Thank you. Thank you, Right Honorable Speaker. Madam Speaker, the object of the bill is to amend the Excise Duty Act to provide for the remission of excise duty paid on damaged, expired, obsolete goods, to revise the rate of excise duty on certain excisable goods and services under Schedule 2 of the Act, and other related matters. In the interest of time, Madam Speaker, we interacted with the committee on the bill, and I am sure further information can be presented.
Do we have a minority on this? Is there a minority?
Yes.
Okay. Yes.
Right Honorable Speaker and honorable colleagues, this report from the committee has a minority report from the Honorable Semuju, Ibrahim Semuju, and team. I put it that way. Right Honorable Speaker and colleagues, I'll go straight to observations in the interest of time. The remission of duty paid on damaged and expired or obsolete goods. The amendment allows a person liable to pay excise duty to apply to the Commissioner General for remission of duty if they can provide sufficient proof that the goods were damaged, expired, or obsolete. This application must include 1. Evidence that the excise duty was paid on the damaged, expired, or obsolete goods where applicable. The goods delivery document, such as a formal order for the delivery of goods, should be available. A report from a competent authority detailing the extent and cause of damage in case of the damaged goods, and any other documentation prescribed by the minister, through regulations. If the Commissioner is satisfied that the excise duty was paid on the affected goods, they may either offset the excise duty paid against any other outstanding duty owed by the taxpayer, or, at the taxpayer's written request, apply the excise duty paid in reduction of any other outstanding obligation or liability to a person liable to pay tax with regard to other undisputed taxes. The committee was informed that the amendment aims to provide equitable relief for taxpayers by ensuring that they are not unfairly taxed on goods that are damaged, expired, or obsolete, and therefore unsellable. The committee observed that the practice that requires the taxpayer to pay for the damaged, expired, or obsolete goods is unfair, and thus this amendment seeks to remedy this anomaly. The committee recommends that Clause 2 be adopted. Increase in excise duty on cigarettes. The The committee was informed that the amendment aims to raise additional revenue of about 8 billion while taking into account inflation. The proposal supports efforts to align Uganda's cigarette excise duty with the East African Community standards, where Uganda's rates are currently low. This amendment will also contribute to public health objectives by discouraging tobacco consumption. The committee observed that there is weak implementation of the Tobacco Control Act. For example, the labeling, advertisement, and gazetting of designated smoking areas, among others, are not adhered to. The excise duty has not been adjusted for inflation since the financial year 2017-18, even though the consumer price index has risen by 28.8% from the financial year 2017-18 to financial year 2023-24. 3. An increase in excise duty on cigarettes is likely to lead to an increase in illicit trade. This will force consumers to opt for unregulated products, thereby leading to the unintended consequence of revenue reduction. And therefore, the committee recommends that 1. Clause 3A of the bill be adopted, and 2. There is need for strict enforcement of Tobacco Control Act Cap 43 by government, and 3. The Uganda Revenue Authority and the Uganda National Bureau of Standards should strengthen efforts in mechanisms against illicit tobacco trade in the country, especially at border points, transit routes, and the wholesale points. Adjustment of excise duty rates for beer from local raw materials. Clause 3B of the bill proposes an amendment to Schedule 2 of the Excise Duty Act to rationalize taxation of beer by repealing the redundant middle-tier tax rate and adjusting the bottom-tier rate to reflect current economic conditions. The Uganda current excise duty structure for the beer follows a 3-tier regime. The top tier, Uganda shillings 2,050 per litre or 60%, whichever is higher for beer, is no local raw material requirement, imported beer. 2. Middle tier, 950 per litre or 30%, whichever is higher, for beer made from barley grown and malted in Uganda. And the bottom tier, 650 shillings per litre or 30%, whichever is higher, for the beer made with at least 75% local sourced raw materials. The committee was informed that the middle tier rate has been obsolete because beer from the barley grown and malted in Uganda qualifies for bottom tier rate. Consequently, the bottom tier specific rate of shillings 650 is no longer practical due to inflation. The proposed adjustment of the specific rate from 650 to 900, an increase of 250, is intended to cater for inflation and effective resultant tax rate. The committee observed that the amendment aligns the tax structure with the present economic conditions. Therefore, the committee recommends that the clause be adopted as proposed in the bill, and the URIS strengthens enforcement mechanism against illicit alcohol trade in the country, which currently stands at 65%. Reduction of tax on fruits, vegetable juice made from local raw materials. In Clause 3D of the bill proposes an amendment to Item 5B of the Schedule 2 to exempt fruit and vegetable juice made from at least 50% pulp sourced from locally grown fruits and vegetables in partner states. The committee was informed that the proposed amendment aims to 1. Eliminate the current ambiguity in the excise duty law. 2. Increase the uptake of locally grown fruits and vegetables and promote value addition. 3. Reduce post-harvest losses and improve returns to farmers. And 4. Support the government's agro-processing priority through promoting the emerging local industry and employment creation. The committee observed that the proposed amendment increases the requirement of pulp for fruit and vegetable juice from locally grown fruits and vegetables from 30% to 50%, but does not affect the excise duty rate. Therefore, the committee recommends that Clause 3D of the bill be adopted. Increase of tax on motor spirits. This proposal was dropped by the sponsor of the bill during the meeting with the committee. Therefore, the committee recommends that the Clause 3E be deleted from the bill. Excise duty on plastics. Clause 3F of the bill proposes an amendment to Item 11 to Schedule 2 by changing the description of plastics to restrict it to sacks and bags of polymer, of ethylene, and other plastics under the Harmonized System Code 3923.21.00 and 3923.2900, and make exceptions to vacuum packing bags for food, juice, tea, and coffee sacks, and the bags for direct use in manufacturing of sanitary pads. The committee was informed that the proposed amendment seeks to clarify that the excise duty on plastics specifically applies to single-use plastics bags and plastic bottles as a major environmental pollutant, while keeping the excise rate unchanged. The proposal acknowledges that not all plastic products have the same environmental impact. This approach seeks to promote environmental responsibility without unduly burdening industries which rely on durable or economically essential plastic products. The committee observed that the proposed amendment seeks to exclude not only vacuum packing bags for food, juice, tea, and coffee sacks, and bags of direct use in the manufacturing of sanitary pads, but also all kinds of plastics which were included in the current provision. The committee established that the proposed amendment exempts all plastic products and plastic granules and will only tax sacks and bags of polymer, of ethylene, and other plastic under the Harmonized System Code 3923.21.00 and 3923.2900, with the exception of the vacuum packing bags for food, juice, tea, and coffee sacks, and bags for direct use in manufacturing of sanitary pads. The committee recommends that Item 11 to Schedule 2 be amended to provide for plastic products and plastic granules which are left out. In conclusion, Madam Speaker and colleagues, the committee recommends that the Excise Duty Amendment Bill be passed subject to the proposed amendments. I beg to move.
Thank you. The minority, raise your areas of dissent.
Thank you, Right Honourable Speaker. My areas of dissent are lack of studies to support tax bills. A. B. Withdrawal of Clause 3E of the bill without adjusting the resource envelope. C. Lack of comprehensive taxation policy in the country. D. Instability of the tax regime coupled with multiple taxes that are crippling the businesses in the country. Dissenting observations, lack of studies of support tax bills. Honourable Speaker, we continue to process tax bills that are not supported by the studies, contrary to Parliament's recommendations. In its report of financial year 2024-2025, the Committee of Budget recommended that going forward, studies should be instituted by the Ministry of Finance and Economic Development to assess the effectiveness, efficiency, and impact of the tax exemptions in a greater detail. In the same year, financial year 2023-2024, also noted that the majority of the tax law amendments were not informed by the tax-related analytical briefs. It emphasized that the ministry responsible for finance failed to adhere to the previous recommendation of Parliament that while standing bills for the financial year 2023-2024, every bill should be accompanied by a stand-alone evaluation or regulatory impact assessment. Right, Honorable Speaker, it is disappointing for the same Committee of Finance to continue supporting and approving bills it knows that don't adhere to its recommendations every financial year. We continue witnessing a lack of appropriate studies for the current tax bills. For instance, while appearing before the Committee of Finance to process the tax bills, the Minister projected that the tax proposals for financial year 2025-2026 would generate Uganda shillings 538.6 billion. Additionally, he projected to generating Uganda shillings 1.885 billion from the URA administration measures, making a total of Uganda shillings 2.4236 billion, while targeting a domestic revenue growth of Uganda shillings to 4.8374 billion. The government doesn't explain how it intends to raise the remaining Uganda shillings 2,413,14 billion. This informs that the government revenue projections are made without studies to support the tax proposals. Failure of URA to achieve targeted revenue projections further confirms our claim. For instance, in the fiscal trends for financial year 2023-2024, URA has targeted to raise 21,218.98 billion in revenue, but only managed to collect 27,301.22 billion, leaving a revenue gap of 1,917.76 billion. Right, Honorable Speaker, I would want to skip the table of the medium projections, financial year 2022-2025 and 2029-2030, to continue and to proceed with the budget framework paper, financial year 2025-2026, revenue targeted, which were compared to the first and second budget called circulars, revenue projections that indicate very wide variations, suggesting a lack of studies underpinning these projections. The 13th September 2024 projected domestic revenue at Uganda shillings 33.182 trillion with a budget of 57.441 trillion. The budget call circular issued 3 months later, on the 13th February 2025, projected domestic revenue at Uganda shillings 35,692.9 billion. That proposed domestic revenue amounted to Uganda shillings 38,818.66 billion for a budget of 71.98 trillion. The frequent changes in revenue targets the frequent changes in the revenue targets imply a lack of thorough studies to support tax proposals. Right, Honorable Speaker, I will also skip this table and get to the national budget that was not adjusted following the withdrawal of a clause from which Uganda shillings 230 billion, 200.30 billion in tax revenue that had been anticipated. The certificate of financial implication submitted by the Ministry of Finance, Planning and Economic Development on 25th March 2025 indicated that the excise duty amendment tax bill was projected to generate 22.70 billion annually from increased excise duty on fuel, cigarettes, and beer. However, during a session with the Committee of Finance, Planning and Economic Development, Clause 3E of the bill was withdrawn. This clause, which proposed to an increase of the excise duty rate on fuel, was expected to raise to Uganda shillings 200,030 billion. Right, Honorable Speaker, the tax proposals are intended to generate revenue for the proposed budget. Following the withdrawal of the fuel tax clause, the government should have either reduced the proposed budget by an equivalent amount or added or identified alternative sources to raise 200.30 billion to cover financial year 2025-2026. There was also a budget shortfall. This table that I'll also skip shows the budget shortfall, and also the proposed budget, that led to the increase of taxes on the fuel. It is indicated in this table below. However, I want to go to the third one, that lack of comprehensive taxation policy in the country. Right, Honorable Speaker, in our various minority reports, we have always advised government to develop a comprehensive tax policy in the country. With time, even the majority reports joined us in agitating for the same. For instance, in its report, the Budget Committee on the Annual Budget Estimates for financial year 2024-2025 recommended government to develop a national tax policy that would form the basis of effective tax legislation and tax administration. Right, Honorable Speaker, the Minister of Finance, Planning and Economic Development presented tax bills. Right, Honorable Speaker, this I will stand this because the minister says he explained to us that he's going to present it in the cabinet.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Thank you.
I'll jump that one. I'll go to instability of the tax regime, coupled with multiple taxes crippling businesses in the country. While taxes are crucial for the country's development, a multitude of taxes and complex tax procedures have placed a significant burden on businesses, hindering their growth, profitability, and overall sustainability. A typical business pays corporation income tax, VAT, excise on locally manufactured or imported goods and services. It, however, pays payee withholding tax, stamp duty, to mention but a few. Right, Honorable Speaker, the cumulative effect of multiple tax significantly erodes profits, leaving businesses with little profits for reinvestment and expansion. It is high time this government streamlined the tax policy, reduce number of levies, simplify tax compliance, and provide a more conducive business environment. Right, Honorable Speaker, the frequent amendment of the tax laws has presented challenges for both the taxpayers and Uganda Revenue Authority in administering taxes. Previous reports from the Committee of Finance regarding tax bills attributed this to the lack of comprehensive tax policy. While processing the financial year 2024-2025 tax bills, the Committee on Finance recommended that Ministry of Finance, Planning and Economic Development establish such a policy to ensure, among other things, stability of the tax regime. Right, Honorable Speaker, it is regrettable that this year the government is proposing 7 tax bills that appear intended to further burden taxpayers without a commensurate improvement in public service delivery. We continue to witness inadequate health care services nationwide and severely underfunded education sector, and the persistent problems of the poor roads and floods, to mention but a few. Taxes must serve as instruments of development, not solely as mechanisms of revenue collection. The front bench, spearheaded by the Minister of Finance, Planning and Economic Development in collaboration with URA, proposes new proposals every year, and this House, the Parliament of Uganda, legislates to increase taxes on every people who who elected us. New taxes upon old ones are cumulatively added on the already heavy taxes burdened first by most Ugandans. While in this obligation, in the obligation of the taxpayers to pay the tax dues, it is equally an obligation of the government to offer services to its citizens in equal measure. Right, Honorable Speaker, countries must pay heavy taxes and have their services improved across the board. In conclusion, governments must adjust its budget by the amount it had proposed to raise the withdrawn clause 3E in bill or provide alternative sources of the shortfall. I beg to submit.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Thank you. Yes, he has a procedure matter.
Yeah, Madam Speaker, I was wondering, when we say we have a minority report, I thought it would be specific to the clauses.
To the clauses.
But then, my honorable colleague is like
It
reading
is on literature.
an alternative policy, tax policy. Why don't you
So
have a comprehensive tax
so
policy and submit it
literature-
to government?
It is on
Instead of-
literature, not on clauses.
You see, Madam Speaker, I signed the minority report, but the former LDU had started complaining in the committee. Why do you have minority report? See, the minority report is
Let's go to serious business. Honorable Minister, you've had Honorable Minister, you've had the minority report. It is more on the policy issues, so you may need to capture the policy issues that are being raised and see how we handle them in the next taxation. Yes. Okay, now I put a question that the Exercise Duty Amendment Bill 2025 be read for the second time. Those in favor say on the contrary nay. Ayes have it.
The Excise Duty Amendment Bill 2025, Bills Committee stage.
Please sit. Lob, sit. Medi, can you go there and leave Lob to concentrate? Yes.
Clause 1.
I put a question that clause 1 stands part of the bill. Those in favor say on the contrary nay. The ayes have it.
Clause 2.
I put a question that clause 2 stands part of the bill. Those in favor say on the contrary nay. The ayes have it.
Clause 3.
Chair.
Right, Honorable Speaker and colleagues. Clause 3 is amended by deleting Clause 3E. Justification proposal was dropped by Minister of Finance during the meeting with the committee.
Yes.
I think my minority report raised the concern that when that clause is dropped as proposed by the minister, he should be able to tell us how he's going to fund the budget. And the figures have been clearly outlined. So it will be important he allays our fear so that we can proceed from the point of knowledge.
Thank you, Right Honorable Chair. Right Honorable Chair, there is a reason when we are considering the budget why we start with the revenue before we come to the expenditure. The outcome from this debate will inform the final resource envelope. At the moment, this fuel, which Honorable Council Nabukera was talking about, is not part of the projection. This was a projection from the MTF, and the MTF did not envisage that we shall be imposing the the fuel levy. Therefore, to allay your fears, Honorable Guzuli and the House, dropping this proposal does not have any impact on the resource envelope.
Shadow?
I think, Madam Speaker, the trouble is that when you are presenting the draft estimate, the requirement in the law, section 12, is that you must issue a certificate speaking to the completeness of the information you are giving to Parliament. So you cannot be fidgeting every day, changing figures as if you were in a workshop. That's what the law says, section 12.
Are you in agreement with the dropping?
We're actually very happy that he had withdrawn. We're only alerting Parliament that that withdrawal has effect on their budget itself.
Okay, Nathan.
Madam Speaker, I think the Minister had a point. A budget is just an estimate of income and expenditure. So this one, even my brother Samuja has said draft. Even he has made it even a draft. So it's a draft. So the truth is that if the Minister has withdrawn a proposal, then he will also
has
have
an alternative.
Alternative. And also, not that everything will be spent to exact point. There could be other adjustments we could buy. So
I put a question that clause 3 be amended as proposed. Those in favor say the contrary nay. The ayes have it.
Title. Sorry, clause 3 as amended.
I put a question that clause 3 as amended stands part of the bill. Those in favor say the contrary nay. The ayes have it.
Title.
I put a question that the title stands part of the bill. Those in favor say the contrary nay. The ayes have it.
Motion for the resumption of the House.
Honorable Minister.
Madam Chair, I move that the House do resume and the Committee of the whole House reports thereto.
I put a question that the House resumes and the Committee of the whole House reports thereto. Those in favor say the contrary nay. The ayes have it.
Report of the Committee of the whole House.
Honorable Minister.
Madam Speaker, I beg to report that the Committee of the whole House has considered the bill entitled the Excise Duty Amendment Bill number 2, 2025, and passed it with amendments.
Thank you.
Motion for adoption of the report of the Committee of the whole House.
Honorable Minister.
Madam Speaker, I beg to move a motion that the report from the Committee of the whole House be adopted.
I put a question that the report of the Committee of the whole House be adopted by this House. Those in favor say the contrary nay. The ayes have it.
Bill's third reading, the Excise Duty Amendment Bill 2025.
Honorable Minister.
Right Honorable Speaker, I beg to move a motion that the Excise Duty Amendment Bill number 2, 2025 be read for the third time and do pass.
I put a question that the Excise Duty Amendment Bill 2025 be read the third time and do pass. Those in favor say the contrary nay. The ayes have it.
A bill for an act titled the Excise Duty Amendment number 2 Act 2025.
Title settled and the bill passed. Thank you. Congratulations.
Item 8.3, the Tax Procedures Code Amendment Bill 2025.
Honorable Minister.
Right Honorable Speaker, I beg to move that the bill entitled the Tax Procedures Amendment Code 2025 be read for the second time.
Seconded. Seconded by Kankonda, Moses, Karamoja, Honorable Bahati, Honorable veterans, Alanyo Nekesa, Omara, Patience, Annette, Nathan, Betty, Jennifer, Faith, Zama, Siraj, Koboko, Enos, Alepto, Sam, Palisa, Hoima, and Honorable Goli. Speak to it. Speak to your motion.
Madam Speaker, you said one of the seconders of this bill is Karamoja.
Karamoja Affairs.
I have looked at the list of
Karamoja
MPs. I didn't
Affairs.
find anyone called Karamoja.
Minister of Karamoja Affairs. Yes. You know, he's an old man. I can't call his name, being my uncle. Yes.
Madam Speaker, the object of the bill is to amend the Tax Procedures Code Act, CAP 343, to provide for use of the national identification number and the registration number as tax identification numbers, provide for a gaming and betting centralized payments gateway system, provide for the penal tax for failure to use or integrate with the gaming and betting centralized payment gateway system, and for other related matters. I submit.
Thank you. Chair, how many minority reports do we have? There's one from Honorable Nathan.
Right Honourable Speaker, the Tax Procedures Code Amendment Bill 2025 has minority reports from a number of colleagues. The Honourable Enos has a minority report. The Honourable Nandala has a minority report on the same, and the Honourable Semuju, Nganda, and Tim. Right, Honourable Speaker, allow me to submit the original copy, original reports of the Tax Procedures Code. I will not divulge into the objects of the bill and all the methodology, but allow me to go straight to the real issues. The replacement of the TINs with NINs and registration numbers. Clause 2, subsection 1 of the bill proposes to substitute section 4 of the Tax Procedures Code, CAP 343, to designate national identification numbers issued by National Identification Registration Authority and the registration number issued by Uganda Registration Services Bureau as the official tax identification number, and the TIN issued by the Foreign Tax Authority with whom Uganda has a tax treaty or agreement for exchange of information. In January 2022, URA issued a public notice requiring taxpayers to update their registration details to include the NINs, thus reinforcing the move towards a unified identification system. The committee was informed that adopting the NIN and URSB registration numbers as TINs offers several benefits as explained below. 1, consistent identification. The NIN ensures continuity, remaining unchanged even when taxpayers' details such as names and addresses are updated. This minimizes confusion and leads to more accurate identification, particularly in cases of individuals with similar names, company mergers, or trade names used, or trade name usage, I beg your pardon. Efficient data management. Using NIN as unique identifier simplifies the integration of various data sources such as tax returns, payments, and other relevant information. This facilitates easier cross-referencing, analysis, and reporting. And 3, improving communication. The NIN provides a clear reference point, enhancing communication between Uganda Revenue Authority taxpayer and taxpayers through both digital and traditional channels, reducing ambiguity and streamlining interaction. The committee therefore observed that the proposal will simplify the process of paying taxes. And 2, the proposal will enable Uganda Revenue Authority to collect data on both individuals and non-individuals who are in the business but not paying their fair share of taxes, and implement the requisite measure thereafter. The proposed enhancement is aligned to Section 65 of the Registration of Persons Act, which permits the use of national identification registration for taxation purposes. And 4, use of NIN will enable taxpayers to easily comply with registration of tax purposes. Majority of Ugandans already have the NINs, which shall not change even upon expiry of the taxpayer's national identification card. 4.3, establishment of a central registry for non-individuals. Clause 2, subsection 2, proposes to amend the Tax Procedures Code to amend the URSB to establish and maintain a centralized registry, centralized register of all non-individual entities registered, incorporated, or operating in Uganda. The committee was informed that currently the registration and regulation of non-individual entities in Uganda is fragmented, with multiple government agencies managing different categories of entities under various legal frameworks. This fragmented approach has resulted in 2 data inconsistencies and duplication of processes, causing inefficiencies in licensing and regulation. The absence of a centralized database complicates efforts to track beneficial ownership, creating opportunities for illicit financial activities, tax evasion, and revenue loss. The proposed central registry is intended, therefore, to address these challenges by providing a unique database of non-individual entities, include trusts, societies, cooperatives, and non-governmental organizations. The committee observed that the establishing a centralized database will create a more efficient and transparent registration framework, and this will streamline taxpayer identification and enhance revenue mobilization. 4.4, inclusion of NIN and registration number in the returns of tax authorities. Clause 2, subsection 2, seeks to amend the Tax Procedure Code Act to require taxpayers to include NINs, business registration numbers, or TINs used by foreign tax authorities with whom Uganda has a tax treaty or agreement for exchange of information on any return, notice, communication, or other documentation submitted for tax purposes. The committee observed that the amendment intends to preserve provisions of Section 4, subsection 4 of the Tax Procedures Code, which requires taxpayers to state their TINs on any return, notice, communication, or other documents lodged for purposes of tax. 4.5, NIN as a requirement for issuance of license. Clause 2, subsection 4, mandates a local authority, government institution, or regulatory body not to issue a license or any form of authorization required for conducting business in Uganda unless the applicant possesses a NIN, business registration number, or a TIN issued by a foreign tax authority with whom Uganda has a tax treaty or agreement for exchange of information. The committee observed that this provision mirrors the current Section 4, subsection 9 of the Tax Procedures Code Act, which imposes a similar requirement for an individual to have a TIN before obtaining a business license. By extending this requirement to include NINs and registration numbers, an amendment aimed at enhancing business registration compliance and support formalization of businesses. 4.6 NIN requirement for registration of instrument for stamp duty. Clause 2, subsection 5 requires that any individual lodging an instrument subject to stamp duty must provide a NIN or business registration number before the instrument can be registered. The committee observed that the proposed amendment mirrors the existing provision under Section 4, subsection 10 of the Tax Procedures Code, which requires the TIN for such transaction. By including NINs and registration numbers in this requirement, the amendment ensures stamp duty obligations are linked to traceable taxpayers' information, further promoting tax compliance and business formalization. The committee recommends as follows. NIRA should simplify the NIN acquisition process to make it faster and easier for Ugandans to acquire the NIN and thus ensure operationalization of this provision. 2. NIRA should deploy technologies and tools like fingerprint readers, and biometric identification to enable taxpayers file returns, notices, communication, or other documents for purposes of tax, especially in cases where the taxpayer may not have a physical and national identification and card owing to loss or misplacement, among other reasons. And 3, the proposed amendment in Clause 2, highlighted above, should be adopted in order to ease tax administration, enforce compliance, consequently expand the revenue base. 4.7, waiver of interest and penalty upon payment of the principal tax. Clause 3 of the bill proposes an insertion of Section 47B in the Tax Procedures Code Act, which provides that any interest penalty outstanding as at the 30th of June 2024 shall be waived where the taxpayer pays the principal tax by 30th June 2026. Further, Clause 3 proposes that where the taxpayer pays part of the principal tax outstanding as at 30th June 2024, by 30th June 2026, the payment of interest and penalty shall be waived on a pro rata basis. A similar provision was introduced in 2023 and 2024 by Ministry of Finance, Planning and Economic Development and passed by Parliament. The committee was informed that this proposal is aimed at providing taxpayers with additional time to resolve outstanding tax issues, stabilize their cash flows, and settle obligations. The committee observed that many taxpayers have not benefited from the 2023 and 24 amendments because of the outstanding issues with their respective URA ledger reconciliation. And therefore, the committee recommends that the proposed amendments be extended. The proposed amendment to extend the waiver of interest and penalty upon payment of principal tax should be adopted. And 2, URA should clean up the tax ledgers to address the numerous complaints from the taxpayers. Right Honourable Speaker and colleagues, 4.8, revision of penalty for non-compliance with IFRIS. Clause 4A of the bill proposes an amendment to Section 93 of the Tax Procedures Code Act to revise the penalties of non-compliance with the electronic physical receipting and invoicing solution by imposing a penalty of double the tax due on the goods and services. The current penalties impose either the tax due on the goods or services or 400 currency points, which is 8 million, whichever is higher. And for using the electronic physical device, or the tax due to the goods and services, or 300 currency points, which is equivalent to 6 million Uganda shillings, whichever is higher, for not issuing an IFRIS, for not using the IFRIS system. That is issuance of a fiscalized receipt. The amendment seeks to replace these penalties to revise provision imposing a penalty of double tax due on the goods and services. The committee was informed that the proposed amendment aims at addressing the iniquity in the current system, where small businesses bear an unfair burden due to the disproportionately high penalties. The committee recommends that the clause be adopted. 4.9. Introduction of a gaming and betting centralized payment gateway system. Clause 5 of the bill proposes insertion of a new section 93A immediately after 93. The insertion requires operators of casinos, gaming and betting activities to conduct all transactions, both for receiving wages and making payouts, exclusively through a centralized payments gateway system licensed by Bank of Uganda under the National Payment System Act. The system will directly link to the Uganda Revenue Authority electronic notice system to facilitate real-time monitoring and reporting of transactions. Clause 5 of the bill also seeks to introduce Section 93B, which stipulates that an operator of a casino, gaming and betting activity who fails to use or integrate with the gaming and betting centralized payment system shall be liable to a penal code equivalent to double the gaming or withholding tax due of 5,500 currency points, whichever is higher. The committee was informed that this provision is intended to enforce compliance with the system given the substantial cash flows and heightened risk of non-compliance in the gaming and betting sector. The committee was also informed that the amendment will help curb illicit financial flows, minimize the risk of tax evasion, improve oversight of the industry's financial activities, and further, the amendment is aimed to reduce and finally eliminate the use of cash in the gaming and betting industry. The committee observed that 1, there are 2 categories of slot machines used in the betting and gaming sector: slot machines which accept Uganda currency, coins and paper notes, and slot machines which accept electronic cards, biometric access. The second category is in line with the technology advancement in the gaming world. The gaming standards developed support the second category, which is in line with the centralized payment gateway system. The National Lotteries and Gaming Regulatory Board is unable to ascertain the accuracy and authenticity of the stakes and payouts of transactional data submitted by operators on the National Central Electronic Monitoring System. There are a number of betting companies which have slot machines which accept Uganda currency, coins and paper notes, and will be required to comply with the requirements of the provision. 4, the centralized payment gateway system will enable the National Lotteries and Gaming Regulatory Board to access transactional data and validate data submitted by operators and thereafter enhance tax administration. The committee recommends that the operators who are not compliant at the commencement of this act should be given a 1-year transition period to should be given a 1-year transitional period to integrate their equipment with the centralized payment gateway system. 4.10. Personal liability for failure to comply with the tax exemption requirements. Clause 5 of the bill proposes insertion of a new section 93C, which requires a taxpayer exempted from tax to continually maintain the conditions necessary to qualify for an exemption under the tax law. If the taxpayer fails to meet these conditions, they will be liable to pay the tax due for the period in which they were non-compliant. It is pertinent to note that the tax due shall be paid personally by the taxpayer who failed to uphold the exemption requirement. The committee was informed that this amendment addresses the significant gap in the law regarding the treatment of taxpayers who cease to meet exemption conditions. Under the current requirement, under the current regime, there is no clear guidance on what happens when an exempt taxpayer no longer satisfies the legal criteria for their exemption. The proposed amendment resolves this by specifying that the exemption will not be applied for any period in which the conditions are unmet, but may resume once the taxpayer regains compliance. The committee observes that the introduction of a personal liability in case of a non-compliance will mainly affect the taxpayers enjoying the VAT and excise duty on supplies received. The proposed amendment indicates that if the taxpayer previously enjoyed an exemption but fails to maintain the required conditions, that taxpayer will bear the responsibility of paying the unpaid tax on supplies made during the period of non-compliance. And 2, the proposed amendment will ensure accountability and prevent abuse of exemptions by certain taxpayers. The committee recommends that the proposed insertion of Section 93C be adopted. The committee, in conclusion, recommends that the Tax Procedures Code Amendment Bill be passed subject to the proposed amendments. I beg to submit.
Thank you. Thank you. Minority.
Thank you very much, Right Honorable Speaker, and I'll be brief. We have 2 areas that we are dissenting with the main committee, that is Clause 4 and Clause 2. When you look at page 2, yes, that is on the penalty of IFRIS, and then the issue of using NIN as TIN, the NIN as tax identification numbers. So when you go to page 2 of the minority report, the negative impact of double IFRIS penalties, and we are proposing to have a capping to a penalty not exceeding 10 million shillings. The government's proposal to double the penalty for non-compliance with IFRIS, electronic fiscal receipting and invoicing system, irrespective of the transaction value, is a counterproductive measure, particularly burdensome to taxpayers. The proposed doubling of the structure risks imposing crippling financial penalties. So I've given an example when you go to page 3, and just to give an example, they are taking the attention of this. I want to give an example of what is happening currently. Procedure.
Yes.
Madam Speaker, I was wondering whether it will not be procedurally right to first conclude that important engagement, such that we present.
We're discussing about procedure code. We're discussing about the bill.
Thank you. Right Honorable Speaker, I was trying to give an example. Right now, if a taxpayer fails to issue a receipt, say someone has sold goods and is supposed to pay a tax of maybe 100,000 shillings and fails to issue the receipt, he's supposed to pay a fine of 6 million shillings. Okay. Currently, he's supposed to pay 6 million shillings, irrespective of the value. So if I fail to issue a receipt 100,000, I pay 6 million. If I fail to issue 50 million, I'll pay still 6 million. Which is unfair to the small taxpayers, because someone who failed to issue a receipt of 10,000 is paying a fine of 6 million. It's unfair to the small ones. But now this amendment, yes, it would be good, but again, it's disadvantaging the large players. those who fail to issue receipts of huge transactions. So, for example, the new proposal, if I fail to issue a receipt of 100,000, so the penalty will be double, which is 200,000 shillings. So if I fail to issue a receipt and the tax is 100 million shillings, double, I'll have to pay 200 million shillings.
Yes.
The tax due on the receipt, yes.
Yes.
I'm saying if you fail to issue a receipt, then you're supposed to pay
double
the penalty. That is double the tax. Yes. So what we are looking at is when we double and leave it open, it might affect the people who transact in large volumes, and we are solving the problem from the small players, but again disadvantaging.
So what is your suggestion?
That is why my proposal was we have a cap, because when you look at other tax laws, so for example, when you look at section 54, where someone fails to furnish a tax return, there is a limit to that, not exceeding 50 currency points. So my request is for us to set a cap to the limit of the penalty, because when you look at one of the amendments, people have failed to even pay the tax because of the penalties being way more than what they're actually supposed to pay. So our proposal, Right Honourable, is to have a cap to that, and we could set whatever we can agree on, but my proposal was maybe 10 million shillings, a tax note, because initially they were paying about 6 million and URA was okay. So they are bringing to solve for the small players. Let us increase it to maybe 10 million shillings, which is about, I think, 500 currency points. That is my proposal.
Yes, Elijah.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Honourable Speaker, I want to just make...
No, let's dispose that.
Yeah.
What's wrong with this?
My proposal, Honourable, because... thank you, Honourable Speaker. My proposal would be, because if you say we are going to cap, why don't we take a percentage of the tax or of the value, just a percentage, say 5% of the value of the tax as a penalty, either 5, 10%, 20%, other than having a value. That would be, because that would be proportional to what you have, or what you have been supposed to pay, other than having those caps and doubling the figures.
Okay. Honourable Massawa, first finish.
Thank you, Right Honourable. The second issue, I think, was that we are disagreeing with the use of NINs as TINs. When you look at the current system right now, even minors are given NINs.
Yes, but for you to get a TIN, you must have a NIN.
Yes, so even the minors have NINs. So I think, in our view, is we are going to bloat the tax register. One of the challenges URA has is a tax register, which there are many people who are on the tax register who have even got TINs, and they are not paying any tax, and they have become a burden to URA. So right now, we are going to create a crisis in the country. We'll have over 23 or 25 million people on the register. So we are bloating the register. And then again, another issue.
When you don't have a business, you're still registered.
Everyone with a NIN will automatically be registered.
No, it is only those with the businesses. Yes, Moses.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I just want to provide some information to the member of the dissenting. One, what they want to be used for identifying taxpayers is the national identification number instead of the TIN. That is for those people who will register for taxation, not just anyone with a NIN. So that's what I wanted to. That's what I want to clarify. And then the other one on the penalty, it is on the penalty on the tax due from the receipt that has been issued, not on the value of the receipt. So when you present it as the value of the receipt, it is misleading and it looks like a big figure. You might find that someone has issued a receipt of about 200 million shillings, but the actual tax due may be 5 million shillings. So that's what will be actually penalized against. Yeah, so I wanted to clarify on that. Thank you very much.
Let him also clarify.
Right Honourable Speaker and colleagues, there is a lot of merit in considering NINs, because I want to give information that in the past,
No, we are making a clarification so that we move faster.
in the past, some of the smaller taxpayers or individuals, for example, in Western Nile, someone who has no tin, who gets imports a motorcycle from DRC, he has to register it, and there's a requirement for the tin. Now, administratively, the cost of him going to meet the requirements of registration and the distance would not be facilitative for the local people. So having to consider a NIN for that tax would be able to facilitate Ugandans, as small as they are, to trade faster. And I think the question would be the effective date of implementation. If the minister is satisfied that the register can hold, it should be able to be implied.
Let's get Masaba first.
Thank you, Right Honorable. I think my deputy chair didn't get me well, but that is the point I was stating, because I was talking of a tax that someone is supposed to pay. So right now, according to the proposal, is to double that tax on a receipt not issued. I think I was clear, but maybe you didn't get me well. And on the issue of tin, when we had the interaction, they stated that automatically whoever has a tin is registered, and he or she becomes a taxpayer. And the argument Honorable Katesh is raising, that it will save people to go and register. Yes, if I buy a car, then automatically I have to register and get a
what
tin. So there is
Katesh is saying, in the circumstance that you don't have a tin number, but you have a NIN number, and he gave an example of if you bought a motorcycle, you're able to register using the NIN.
Right Honorable, they are replacing the tin with NIN. So there will be nothing to do with tin anymore in the country. So, yeah.
How can you replace
yes,
tin with the NIN?
Right Honorable.
Masaba, have you finished with your areas of dissent?
Right Honorable, yes, those were the two areas. And the other issue concerned data integrity and security. Still, it's about the NIN as well and TIN. And then someone has to file, which might become a burden. I think this is one of the issues that we raise, a requirement for people now to file returns at the end of each year because they have a TIN. They have it.
Madam Speaker, the procedural matter I'm raising regards the presentation of this report. In our rules, reports are not casual statements that are submitted or made on the floor of Parliament. That's why the requirement is for it to be written. And when you are presenting it, you are confined.
Capture all what is in the report. He was just explaining the report, but capture what is on the report.
The point I'm raising is if he's not presenting the full report, and this report has just been brought to us, it defeats the purpose for which reports are supposed to be presented to Parliament. So either the reader confines or we suspend and give members time to reflect on the report.
Capture whatever has been presented. What is in the report?
Chair, the report was provided and uploaded, and I was actually concluding on, that is part C. I don't know if you're not following, but it's there, on data integrity and security concerns. Adopting NINs instead of TIN endorses data privacy by linking the national identification database with the tax system, raising serious concerns regarding data privacy and the potential of misuse of sensitive personal information. Secondly, with the rapid cybercrime, assurance of the security of the integrated system against cyber threat and unauthorized access is paramount. Right Honorable Speaker and members, I beg to submit.
Thank you.
Madam Speaker, thank you so much, and honorable colleagues. Mr. Speaker, Madam Speaker, and sorry.
Honorable Nathan.
Okay, thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Honorable Musasizi, remember, I'm the chairman. Running the
Honorable
speaker-
Musasizi, you can have given you an off.
Madam Speaker and honorable colleagues, the dissenting view I have is which the chairperson of the committee has talked about, and the committee is on clause 3. That's waiver of interest and the penalties. Madam Speaker and honorable colleagues, if we don't handle this thing very carefully, it is going to come year in, year out. And the chair of the committee has clearly stated the ledgers of URA are a big problem. And because of that, I want to refer to section 39 of the Tax Procedures Act Code, not section 38, which says, when a taxpayer is liable for a penal tax and the interest in relation to a tax liability, and the taxpayer makes a payment, and is less than the total amount of tax, the penal tax and the interest due, the amount is applied in the following order. In payment of the principal tax, in payment of penal tax, the balance of
Madam Speaker, my former chairman, a while ago, raised the matter of reading a report as it is. And now,
He's doing referencing.
He's also referencing, yet he has a minority report. So
the presumption is that all of you don't have the principal act, is just referencing for everybody.
Because he wanted to follow what he wrote as his minority on the screen.
Madam Speaker, this one is the law. I was helping you to know. So, Madam Speaker, the amendment which I want to raise is that under clause 3, I am raising that the amendment should read that interest and penalties outstanding between 1st July 2014 and the 30th June 2025 be waived as long as the taxpayer pays the principal tax by 30th June 2026. The justification for this is to address, this will address the taxpayers who have been treated unfairly when they have paid their tax and heavy penalties and interest as a result of tax ledgers by URA, which I was reading the order for my colleagues. The ledgers have been heavily overinflated with interest and the penalties since 2010. The principal tax outstanding in most cases is a result of overpayments in the earlier periods of interest and the penalties. Before this amendment came, they were easy, always when you would pay money, they would apportion and the penalties. Until then this one came, now that's where it leaves the principal. So you will discover that the current say the principal could be even the interest. Because if you have applied the money to the principal, what would be outstanding would have been what? Interest and the penalties. This will help to eliminate areas which are a result of only interest and penalties for a long period. This current clause helps offenders other than the compliant taxpayers. The justification here is that those who have not paid their principal tax and the interest and the penalties, which is outstanding now, are being helped for them to write. But those who paid earlier, they have charged it in principal, interest, and the penalties. Now, the reason why I put up 2014, not 2010, is for purpose of getting just a middle point, that Uganda Revenue Authority cleans those ledgers and the people pay the right tax. Madam Speaker, if we do this, it will address the issue of every year coming in asking for waivers of interest and penalties. I beg to submit.
Thank you, thank you. Honorable Nathan is just talking about a bloated ledger. Yes.
Right, Honorable Speaker, the issues that are being raised here, I think we may not be able to. I was going to say something. Right, Honorable Speaker, some of the issues they're raising here, which are supposed to be minority reports, in my view, are really questions for us to harmonize either the drafting or the understanding of what we are doing. Is it okay would I to propose that you allow the people from finance, the government team, and the members on the other side with the dissenting views to sit and first harmonize these issues, because some of the issues that Honorable Masaba was raising, I thought that if we sat down, we could be able to find a common position on what we are trying to understand.
So you're saying that we stand over this bill?
Yes, so that the members can the issues that are being raised can be harmonized between the two sides.
Honorable Attorney General, we are going to pass the budget. You want us to pass the budget before we pass the bills?
Speaker, we met Minister
Maybe
of
we can
Finance.
give you today up to tomorrow. Then we start with this tomorrow at 2.
No, Madam Speaker, we have had meetings, ourselves and Finance and URA. Where we have disagreed, we have disagreed. That's why we are before Parliament to take a decision. So the Attorney General cannot advise that we go back and conduct meetings that we have had. So we have disagreed. Let Parliament take a decision.
Okay.
I would seek, Madam Speaker, the Attorney General, we have these minority reports. Why, Madam Speaker, don't we have them on the floor?
Can I ask this team to study the minority reports, and then tomorrow we start with this bill?
Yes, but Madam Speaker, my
the
prayer,
House adjourned to tomorrow.